I'm back in the workshop this morning. Today I'm going to show you how to do binding on the top of a guitar. I have unfortunately used all my counter space there, so this will be a little different, but we'll try to get you shown from here. This is the body we're going to bind. It's cut out to shape. This one I didn't use the router template to make the shape, but if you are going to use the router template to make the shape, definitely do that first. Give it a little bit of sand as well, because you're not going to want to sand too much on the binding once you get it installed in there. The back has got a bit of a carve in it, so I'm not going to do the back, I'm just going to do the top. We're going to run a bearing bit across the top in the router, and it'll cut a nice little channel in there to set the binding in, and then we will glue it in. This is the binding I'm using. I got it off of Amazon. It comes in a big roll. It says it's supposed to completely cover. I think in the description it said it was long enough to go around the outside of an acoustic guitar, so it should be long enough to go around my bass guitar here. Basically what you want to do is you want to take your binding, and then this is the router bit that I'm going to use. Focus, there we go. So it's got a bearing on the top, and then it's got a cutter, and then this is the shank where it goes into the router. I bought this from StewMac. I'm sure there are other available options, but that's where I got this. It wasn't cheap by any means. Nothing ever is there, but it's a good quality piece. The pack comes with a bunch of different bearings that you can use, and basically what you do is use a different size bearing for the thickness of the the thickness of the channel you're cutting for your binding. So basically what I did is I just took the end of the binding, stuck it on the bearing, and then you just kind of measure where the blade sticks out if it's going to be make your channel the right depth. So if this was thinner binding, you would want a bigger, or a smaller bearing on the top, and if this was super thin binding, you would use a bigger bearing to cut the width of your cut. Can you see just a little bit of channel there? So then all you have to do is put this in your router table. You can do it handheld, but if you have a router table, it's probably easier to keep your piece flat and to keep your binding channel all symmetrical. You just set your height for how deep you want it to cut on the thing, and run it around the outside. I'm gonna show you that here in a second, but just make sure that you go slow and that you're not taking off too much in a single pass. It's the way you get tear out, and tear out is not fun. Anything can be fixed, but it's varying levels of success on something like that. So you're best to go slow and be careful with what you're doing. There are different ways that you can glue this stuff on. There's stuff called Duco cement, and it does really well. It's just like the old model glue that you would squeeze into the channel and then tape your binding in there. I'm going to use acetone. Basically what this does is it melts the binding material to make it stick to the channel. So I'm basically going to use a paintbrush and a cup and paint it on there, doing small sections at a time, and then I will tape it on with just some painter's tape. It's pretty easy this way, and it's a lot less messy, for lack of a better term. The cement stuff is can get a little gross. And if you use super glue or something, there's cleaning up involved in that. This will basically just sand right away any kind of discoloration that you get in your wood. So I've done this with this stuff before, and it seems to work pretty well. So I'm going to get set up and show you how to do that. It's pretty simple. It's just you've got to, you don't have to move fast, but it's kind of a, just keep your concentration and go around the outside. It's not rocket science. You're just taping it on there. So this body's already cut, and the channel is now routed. I don't know if you can, yeah, around the outside. So all we're gonna do is put some acetone in that channel and stick the binding to it with some tape. The binding will curve. You can bend it pretty well. For this kind of point here, I'm gonna have to cut it and join it. So there'll be a couple of spots planted out when you're doing it. I'm going to do this point around the back to this point in one, and then I'll cut it and I'll do the strip here. Hopefully I can make this corner without without having to cut, but we'll see. And just keep going around. So these pieces will be a bit tougher because of the curve here, but you should be able to do it. You can. I'm gonna leave the binding out in the sun for a few minutes while I'm getting prepared to do it, so it should warm up a little bit and it should be a little more pliable to make some of the curves. I'm gonna get set up to do this, and we'll show you how to do it. I'm going to switch this over to time-lapse mode here in a minute. Sorry about the noise in the background. I don't have access to the inside at the moment, so I'm out underneath the deck. As you can see, got a whole bunch of tape pulled out, ready to go. I'm going to start this off. I'm not going to start it right at the very corner. I'm going to get it stuck in here a little farther down before I try to get the end pushed down. Basically what I have here is acetone in a little cup, and then my paintbrush. I'll get it started here, and then we will go into time lapse. Alright, so we've got the tape all off here. You can see the little bit of a lip. I scraped just a hair there just to show you what the lip is. So we're going to scrape the rest of this down. I probably could have routed the channel a little deeper, but this is how it turned out. I'm going to do everything but the corners here just to get it mostly done, and then we'll go back and I'll show you how I do the corners. What I did here as you can see, I bound it right up until where the sharp corner is, and then I cut it off straight, and I put another piece straight across that. The acetone will melt it together, so it should be fine that way. You just got to carefully sand it back so that it's a nice edge. And the the spot in the neck here, we're gonna have to obviously make a little room there for the neck to fit in. But this is pretty much the process. I'm gonna use a card scraper to scrape the binding down. You can use sandpaper. You can use a razor blade. This is just what I have. So I'm gonna clamp it down here so that it doesn't move, and then just push the scraper. Not a ton of pressure here. Just don't want to take off too much all at once. Basically all I've done is taken some of these shavings from the scraped binding and mixed them with a little bit of acetone to make kind of a goo. And then any spots that have any kind of gaps or anything, I've just filled the gaps with that stuff. Once we sand it back, it should be a pretty good seamless transition between the wood and the binding. I'm going to save a bit of this in case I need it later on. If I notice anything while I'm doing the finish sanding, I can put some stuff back in there. But that is pretty much how you do binding. This is, you can just feel it's a little bit proud of the side of the wood here. But this isn't finished sanded, so by the time this gets all finished sanded, and then if you need to scrape the binding after the applied finish, it's good to have a little bit of extra material here. So I'm going to go through, and any other spots that I find I'm going to fill, but that's pretty much the end of this process.